Blind date on Christmas Eve. The unlucky single mother arrived late, but the billionaire waited anyway and was surprised. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The December rain in New York City fell relentlessly on the hot asphalt of Fifth Avenue when the bus that Sarah took every day started making a strange noise and finally pulled over. She looked desperately at her phone's clock, a simple device she had received from her boss the previous year, and saw that it was exactly 5:45 in the afternoon. Her date was at 6 o'clock at Cafe Aroma in Brooklyn, and she was already 15 minutes late, considering the usual traffic. "It can't be now, for God's sake," she murmured to herself, feeling her stomach churn with nerves. Sarah Johnson, 28 years old, had honey-colored curly hair that she always tried to tame with cheap products from the local store, expressive brown eyes that reflected an almost stubborn determination, and small hands calloused from hard work. She stood 5 feet 3 inches tall and had a smile that lit up her face even on the toughest days. And God knew she had many. She got off the bus, along with other equally irritated passengers, and looked around for alternatives. A taxi passed by in the distance, already occupied. An Uber would be too expensive for her tight budget. She had no choice but to run, even wearing the only formal dress she owned, a navy blue model borrowed from Mrs. Thompson, her neighbor from the apartment next door in the public housing complex, and the low-heeled shoes she had bought for $40 on sale at a local discount store. "Sarah, you can do this," she told herself, adjusting the strap of her small black purse on her shoulder. "After everything you've been through, a little run won't bring you down." She started walking quickly down the sidewalk, then moved to a faster pace, and when she realized she wouldn't make it on time, she began to run. Her hair came loose from the bun she had carefully styled, using the clips that her 8-year-old daughter Sophia loved to play with. The pink lipstick she had applied with her fingers in the cracked bathroom mirror began to fade with the sweat and her heavy breathing. As she ran down Fifth Avenue, passing expensive stores she had never entered, Sarah thought about how surreal it was to be going to meet a complete stranger she had met on a dating app. She worked as a cleaner in 3 different houses, Mondays and Thursdays at the Mendez family home on the Upper East Side, Tuesdays and Fridays at Mrs. Helena's house on the West Side, and Wednesdays and Saturdays at the Silver family home in Chelsea, and also sold gourmet cupcakes on Sunday nights to supplement her income. "What a crazy idea, Sarah," she thought, dodging a group of young people coming out of a clothing store. "You don't even have time to breathe, and you're going to meet a guy who could very well be a total liar." But there was something in the conversation they had through the app that intrigued her. David, that was his name, hadn't tried to impress her with pictures in expensive places or luxury cars like most men who appeared there. In fact, he seemed genuinely interested when she mentioned Sophia and how challenging it was to be a single mother in a city like New York. He hadn't asked intrusive questions about her financial situation or tried to arrange a meeting in places she obviously couldn't afford. When she finally arrived at Brooklyn, it was already 6:40. The rain had stopped, but it had left its mark. Sarah's hair was stuck to her sweaty face, her makeup was smudged, and the borrowed dress had some sweat stains. She stopped in front of Cafe Aroma, a cozy establishment with plants on the facade and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the slightly open door. He must have left by now, she thought, taking a deep breath to calm herself. 40 minutes late. I would have left myself. But when she pushed the glass door and entered the softly lit space with soft jazz playing, her eyes immediately found a male figure sitting at a corner table near the window overlooking the street. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, an immaculate white shirt, and a discreet tie. He had dark hair with some grey strands at the temples, appeared to be in his 40s, and was calmly reading a book while sipping what looked like an espresso. Sarah hesitated for a moment at the entrance, feeling completely out of place in that environment. The other patrons in the cafe wore clearly expensive clothes, spoke in low tones about business and international travel, and she felt like an intruder at a party she hadn't been invited to. "Sarah?" The deep male voice made her look up. The man at the table had stood up and was looking at her with a smile that seemed relieved. "David?" She approached, embarrassed, trying to smooth her hair with her hands. "I'm so sorry for being late. The bus broke down on the highway, and I had to run and—" "Breathe," he said, still smiling, and pulled out a chair for her. "Would you like water, coffee? You look like you've run a marathon." Sarah sat down gratefully, taking the napkin he offered to dry her face. 40 minutes late. Why are you still here? Any normal person would have left." David sat back down and watched her for a moment before responding. His eyes were dark, almost black, and had an intensity that made her feel like he could see beyond appearances. "You know, Sarah, I normally would have left. In fact, cancelling appointments due to lateness is practically my specialty. So why did you stay?" The question came out more directly than she had intended. He intended to. He chuckled softly, a sound that she found surprisingly warm. "Honestly, I can't explain it. When you talked about your daughter in our conversation, the way you described her, the love that shone through your words." David paused, as if he were carefully choosing his words. "It's been a long time since I heard someone speak with such passion about something. It made me curious." Sarah felt her face heat up. "Sophia is really special. She's 8 years old and the smartest person I know. Sometimes I think she should be the one giving me advice." "How is she handling you going out to meet a stranger on a Thursday night?" David asked, signaling for the waitress to bring water for Sarah. "She's at Mrs. Thompson's house, our neighbor, an elderly lady who is like a grandmother to Sophia." Sarah gratefully sipped the cold water, and to be honest, she encouraged me to download that app. She said I spend too much time just taking care of her, and that I need to take care of myself too. 8 years old, and already giving romantic advice. Impressive. Sophia has always been mature for her age. I think when we go through some hardships, kids end up growing up faster. Sarah hadn't planned to talk about this on their first date, but there was something in the way David was paying attention, truly paying attention, without fiddling with his phone or looking elsewhere, that made her feel at ease. "So what are your plans for Christmas? It's coming up." David took a sip of his coffee, maintaining eye contact. Sarah sighed. Sophia really wants a tablet for her schoolwork. She sees the other kids with one and... She stopped, realizing she was talking too much about money. "Anyway, let's see what Santa can do, right?" There was a moment of silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. David seemed to be processing something, and Sarah took the opportunity to really observe him. He had an upright posture, well-groomed hands, very different from hers, which were always dry from cleaning products, and a watch that even she, who knew nothing about brands, could tell was expensive, very expensive. "David," she finally said, "can I ask a direct question?" "Of course." "What is a man like you doing on a dating app meeting a woman like me on a Thursday night?" He laughed again, but this time the sound had a note of sadness. "A woman like you? You know what I'm talking about. Your clothes, your watch, the way you speak. It's obvious we're from completely different worlds." David was silent for a long moment, spinning the cup between his hands. "Sarah, can I be direct too?" She nodded. "I'm 42. I built a company from scratch. I work 16 hours a day. I have more money than I know what to do with. And do you know how long it's been since someone made me laugh genuinely?" He looked her in the eyes. I can't remember. Everyone in my life wants something from me. Money, connections, status. When I read your profile, I saw a woman who clearly wasn't looking for a sponsor. She was looking for a real connection. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. And do you think you found that? You ran 40 blocks in the rain to not miss a date with a complete stranger. I think that says a lot about your character. They stared at each other for a moment, and Sarah felt that something fundamental had changed in the dynamic between them. It was no longer about two people trying to impress each other. It was about two people recognizing something genuine they hadn't expected to find. You know what, David? Sarah smiled, finally feeling relaxed. I think this could be the start of a very interesting friendship. 3 weeks after their first date, Sarah still couldn't believe that David continued to call every day. These weren't the sugary romantic conversations she saw in the soap operas she watched on Sundays at Mrs. Thompson's house. They were real conversations about work, about Sophia, about the little everyday dramas of a New York City he was discovering through her eyes. "Mom, you're smiling at the phone again," Sophia said, entering the small kitchen of their 2-room apartment in the Jose Bonifacio residential complex. The girl had darker, curly hair than her mother, bright eyes that seemed to capture everything around, and a curious personality that sometimes made Sarah worry about how many questions she asked. "I'm not smiling at the phone. I'm smiling because I'm happy," Sarah replied, putting her phone away in the pocket of the blue uniform she wore while working for the Mendez family. "And you should be finishing your math homework, not watching your mom." "I already finished. And Mrs. Thompson said that when a woman is smiling like that, it's because she's in love." Sophia climbed onto the chair at the small formica table that served both for meals and for her to do her homework. "Are you in love with David?" Sarah almost spilled the cup of coffee she was drinking. In recent days, Sophia had become a real detective, asking questions that left her speechless. "Sophia, you're 8 years old. You shouldn't be thinking about these things." "Mom, I watch TV. I know how it works." The girl crossed her small arms, mimicking a gesture Sarah made when she was being serious. "And besides, you've never brought any man here. This David must be special." "I didn't bring him here because... Sarah stopped, realizing she didn't have a convincing answer. The truth was that she was scared that David would see where she really lived and realize the social chasm that existed between them. Scared that Sophia would grow attached to him and then be hurt if things didn't work out. Sarah sat down next to Sophia and stroked her hair. Sometimes adults need time to understand their own feelings. "But you like him, right? I can see it on your face." Sarah sighed. Lying to Sophia never worked. The girl had an impressive emotional radar. "Yes, I like him. But liking someone doesn't mean things will be easy." "Why not?" "Because..." Sarah searched for a way to explain without going into details Sophia didn't need to know yet. "Because he and I have very different lives. He works in a big office, has a nice apartment, can travel whenever he wants. I work cleaning other people's houses and selling cupcakes to pay our bills." Sophia was silent for a moment, processing the information. "But that doesn't matter if you like each other, right? Mrs. Smith always says that the heart doesn't see social class." The innocence of her daughter made Sarah's heart tighten. "Mrs. Smith is right, sweetheart. But the adult world is sometimes more complicated than Mrs. Smith's advice." The phone rang at that moment, interrupting the conversation. Sarah saw David's name on the screen and felt that familiar pang of nerves mixed with joy. "Hi," she answered, trying to sound casual. "Sarah, hi. Listen, I know this is last minute, but could you meet me tonight? There's something I'd like to discuss with you in person." His tone was different, more formal, almost nervous. Sarah felt her stomach churn. "Did something happen?" "No, it's nothing bad. At least I don't think it's bad. I just prefer to talk in person." Sarah looked at Sophia, who was pretending not to pay attention, but was clearly listening to every word. "I can, sure. Where do you want to meet?" "How about the same cafe as the first time, at 8? "Perfect. I'll see you there." After hanging up, Sarah stared at the phone with a worried expression. Sophia seized the opportunity. "Did he seem nervous?" "A little." Sarah got up, grabbing her bag and checking if she had enough money for the bus fare. "You'll stay with Mrs. Smith tonight, okay?" "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "If you like David so much, why are you scared?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She paused in the middle of the small room, looking at her daughter, who was watching her with eyes too serious for an 8-year-old. "You know, Sophia, sometimes when we spend too much time just taking care of ourselves, we get scared to let other people into our lives. It's like we forget how to do that. But you let me into your life. You're different, sweetheart. You're my daughter. It was natural from the very first moment." Sophia nodded, but Sarah could see there were more questions in the girl's mind. "Mom, can I meet David someday?" The question Sarah had been dreading. "Maybe, when I'm sure he'll be in our lives for a good while." "And how will you be sure?" Sarah laughed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "When I figure it out, I'll let you know." At 8 o'clock sharp, Sarah was sitting at the same table where they had met for the first time. This time, she had arrived 5 minutes early, wearing the same borrowed dress from Mrs. Thompson, who was starting to get worried about how many times Sarah had borrowed it, and the same shoes that made her feet hurt. David arrived on time, but Sarah immediately noticed something different about him. He was more formal than usual and carried a leather briefcase that he carefully placed on the floor next to his chair. "Sarah, thank you for coming." He sat down, seeming to choose his words carefully. "How was your day?" "David, you're making me nervous. What happened?" Sarah decided to be direct. 3 weeks of daily conversations had created an intimacy that didn't require beating around the bush. He laughed, but it was a tense sound. "You know me well enough by now, right? Well enough to know when you're stalling to say something important." David took a deep breath, looking directly into her eyes. "Sarah, I need to tell you something about myself, something I should have said from the first day, but I didn't know how." Sarah's heart raced. "You're married." "No!" He hurried to deny it. "No, it's not that. It's about my job. About who I really am." Sarah furrowed her brow. "Did you lie about your profession?" "I didn't lie. I just omitted some important details." David picked up the briefcase from the floor and took out some papers. "Sarah, I don't work at a real estate company. I own several real estate companies, and some construction firms, and a few hotels." Sarah looked at the papers he placed on the table. They were magazine articles about business, photos of him at corporate events, stories about financial successes. In all of them, David was identified as David Johnson, real estate entrepreneur, with numbers that made her head spin. You're a billionaire?" The question came out as a whisper. "Unfortunately, yes." "What do you mean, unfortunately?" David ran his hands through his hair, messing up his impeccable hairstyle. "Because I knew that when you found out, everything would change between us, and I don't want it to change, Sarah. These 3 weeks have been the best I've had in years." Sarah was staring at one of the photos, where David was standing next to other businessmen at some charity event, all dressed in tuxedos, at some luxurious hotel she only saw on television. "Sarah, say something, please." She lifted her eyes, and David saw something that made him immediately regret revealing the truth. It was hurt and disappointment. 3 weeks, David. 3 weeks talking to me every day, making me believe you were a normal person, that we had things in common. Her voice was low, but Sarah could feel the tension. Do you know how hard I work to support my daughter? Do you know how many houses I clean each week? I know, and that doesn't matter to me, Sarah. That's why I didn't say anything, because I knew how you would react. React how? Now her voice rose a bit. David, I sell cupcakes at night to buy school supplies for my daughter. You probably spend in one night what I earn in an entire month. And so? Money doesn't change who I am. Sarah laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Doesn't change. David, you lied to me for 3 weeks. You let me talk about my financial struggles, let me worry about whether I could pay the cafe bill. Let you what? Let me feel like we were equals. The words came out with a pain that David didn't expect. Let me believe that this could work. It can work, Sarah. Nothing has changed. Everything has changed, David. Everything. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in the twin bed she shared with Sophia, staring at the ceiling with water stains, trying to process everything David had revealed. Beside her, Sophia slept peacefully, hugging the teddy bear she had won in a school raffle the previous year, the only truly new toy she owned. Billionaire, she murmured to herself, as if repeating the word could make it make more sense. I was dating a billionaire and didn't even know. At 5 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep. She carefully got up so as not to wake Sophia and went to the small kitchen to prepare breakfast. As she heated the water on the sometimes faulty 2-burner stove, her phone vibrated with a message. Sarah, I know you must be upset with me, but please don't give up on us without giving me a chance to explain properly. David. She read the message 3 times before deleting it without responding. How could she explain to him that it wasn't anger she was feeling? It was shame. Shame for having believed that a man like him could be genuinely interested in a woman like her. Shame for having talked about her financial struggles to someone who probably earned in one day what she earned in a year. Mom, why? Did you wake up so early? Sophia appeared in the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, wearing the now small Tebolinia pajamas that she refused to stop using. I couldn't sleep well, sweetheart. Sarah served 2 cups of coffee with milk, using sugar sparingly because it was running out and she wouldn't get more until Friday. Do you want bread with butter or cream crackers? Mum, did something happen with David last night? The question caught Sarah off guard. Sophia was only 8 years old, but she seemed to have a radar for sensing when things weren't right. Why are you asking? That? Because you have the same face you had when Mrs. Smith said she wouldn't need your services anymore last year. Sophia sat in the plastic chair she had used since she was little, and because you're not smiling at your phone this morning. Sarah sighed, serving coffee with milk to her daughter. David told me some things about his life last night, and I found out that he is different from what I thought. Different how? Different as in rich, Sophia. Very rich. Sophia took a sip of her coffee, thinking, and is that bad? It's not bad, sweetheart. It's just complicated. But why? Being rich doesn't make him a bad person, right? The simplicity of the question made Sarah stop. All night long she had focused on how deceived, humiliated, and out of place she felt. But at no point had she questioned whether David was a good or bad person. No, it doesn't make him a bad person. Then what's the problem? Sarah looked at her daughter, trying to find words she could understand. You know when you want to play with a classmate, but she has much more expensive toys than yours, and you feel embarrassed. About your toys? Sophia nodded. It's kind of like that for me, only it's not about toys, it's about everything in our lives. But Mom, Mrs. Smith always says that what matters isn't what we have, it's how we treat other people. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. It was the number for the Williams family, where she worked on Mondays and Thursdays. Hello? Sarah? This is Mrs. Williams. Look, I know today is Monday and you were supposed to come, but something came up at home. Could you come only on Thursday this week? Sarah's heart raced. Losing a day of work meant losing a day's pay, money she couldn't afford to lose. Mrs. Williams, did something happen? I can come later if that's better. No, it's nothing you can resolve. It's just, well, we had some family issues, and the house will be full of relatives today. Better to leave it for Thursday. Sarah hung up, feeling her stomach churn. One less day of work when money was already tight. And now, with the confusion about David, she couldn't even think straight. Mom, you look pale. What happened? Nothing, sweetheart. Just a change in my work schedule. Sarah forced a smile. Come on, let's get ready to take you to school. The journey to Sophia's school took 20 minutes by bus. Along the way, Sarah tried to focus on her daughter's excited chatter about the Christmas play. Sarah was preparing for the school event, but her mind was divided between worrying about money and her confusion about David. Mom, are you listening to me? Sophia tugged at her mother's sleeve. Sorry, sweetheart. I was thinking about other things. What were you saying? About the Christmas play. The teacher said we need costumes, but they don't have. To be expensive. Can I participate? Sarah looked at her daughter, seeing hope in her brown eyes. Christmas costume. Another expense she hadn't anticipated. Of course you can, sweetheart. We'll figure out the costume. Thank you, Mom. You're the best. Sophia kissed Sarah's cheek, making her feel even worse for worrying about money when she should be celebrating her daughter's joy. After dropping Sophia off at school, Sarah took 2 buses to get to Chelsea, where she worked at the Silver household on Wednesdays. But since it was Monday, and she had lost her job at the Williams household, she decided to use the time to do something productive, look for more clients for her cupcakes. She walked through the affluent neighborhood, observing the large houses with well-kept gardens, imported cars in the driveways, and uniformed maids she recognized from sight. It was a world where she worked but never belonged, and now, knowing that David was part of that world, not just part of it, but owning a considerable piece of it, the distance felt even greater. Her phone rang again. David. Again. This time she answered, but without enthusiasm. Hi. Sarah, thank God. I was getting worried. His voice sounded relieved. Did you get my message? I did. And? Sarah stopped in a small park, sitting on a painted wooden bench. David, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say that you're willing to give me a chance to explain why I didn't mention the money from the beginning. Okay, I'm listening. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Over the phone. Sarah, this is too important to discuss over the phone. Then when? Can you have lunch with me today? Sarah looked around the park, seeing some nannies pushing strollers, an elderly man reading a newspaper, a woman passing by with grocery bags, ordinary people living ordinary lives. David, I can't have lunch in the places you usually go. Then you choose where you want to meet. The response caught Sarah off guard. Anywhere. Anywhere. Sarah thought for a moment. There's a bakery on Teodoro Sampaio Street near the clinic subway station, Joe's Bakery. Can you get there? I can. What time? 1 o'clock? Perfect. Sarah. What? Thank you for not giving up on us. She hung up without responding, but for the first time since the night before, she felt something beyond hurt. It was curiosity. She wanted to hear what David had to say, and more than that, she wanted to understand why a man with all the money in the world had chosen to spend 3 weeks talking to her every day. At exactly 1 o'clock, Sarah was sitting at a Formica table at Joe's Bakery, a simple establishment that served lunch specials for $15 and had plastic tables on the sidewalk. When she saw David approaching, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her 3-month rent. She felt a pang of mischievous satisfaction. She wanted to see how he would fare outside his comfort zone, but David surprised her once again. He greeted the bakery owner, ordered a chicken lunch special with fries as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and sat down without showing any discomfort. "How did you find this place?" he asked, tasting the food. "I work at a house nearby sometimes. And you? How did you end up here?" "Rideshare," David smiled. The driver was a bit confused when I gave him the address. I guess it wasn't the kind of place he expected. To take someone dressed like this. Sarah couldn't hide a smile. "David, why didn't you tell me about the money from the start?" He stopped eating, looking directly at her. "Because everything in my life revolves around money, Sarah. Everyone who gets close to me wants something. A job, an investment, a favor, an expensive gift. For the last 10 years, I haven't been able to have a genuine conversation with someone without the topic of money coming up in the first 5 minutes. And it was different with me? Completely different. You talked about your struggles, yes, but you never asked me for anything. You never hinted that I should help you. You never tried to impress me or flatter me." David paused. For the first time in years, I felt like a normal person talking to another normal person. Sarah fiddled with her food, processing his words. "But you have to understand that this changes everything, right? I spent these 3 weeks thinking we were 2 working adults trying to get to know each other. Now I find out you could buy the building where I live without even feeling it in your budget. And does that change how you feel about me?" The question was simple, but Sarah took a while to respond. "No, that's the worst part. It doesn't change how I feel. It changes what I can do with those feelings." "Why?" "Because we're not equals, David. And no matter how much you want to pretend we are, the reality is that you live in a world where I only enter to clean." David was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Sarah, can I ask you a question?" "Sure. If I were a mechanic or a teacher or a civil servant making $5,000 a month, would you be here having lunch with me today?" Sarah looked at him, surprised by the question. "Of course I would." "Then why should the fact that I make more money change that?" "Because—" Sarah paused, realizing she didn't have a convincing answer. "Because it's different. It's different because—" "What?" "I'm still the same person who has been talking to you all these days. I still enjoy your stories about Sophia. I still laugh at your comments about the odd bosses. And I still feel like I can talk to you about anything." Sarah felt her defenses starting to crumble. "David, you don't understand. I have pride, a lot of pride, and being with someone who has so much money makes me feel like I'm a gold digger. Even knowing that you've never asked me for anything, even knowing that you didn't even know I had money." The question hit Sarah hard. She had spent the whole night feeling deceived, but she hadn't stopped to think that maybe David was protecting himself too. Maybe he was scared as well. "Sarah," David continued, "I understand your pride, but don't let it destroy something that could be good for both of us." She looked at him for a long moment, seeing not the billionaire businessman, but the man who had waited 40 minutes for her in the rain. The man who called every day just to see how her day was. The man who sat in a simple bakery eating a lunch special without complaining. "Okay," she finally said, "but with a few conditions." "What conditions?" "First, no expensive gifts, for me or for Sophia." "Deal." "Second, I pay my own bills when we're together." David hesitated. "Sarah, it's non-negotiable, David. It's either this way or it's not." "Okay, I agree." "And third," Sarah took a deep breath, "I want to know your real life. I don't want any more lies or omissions. If we're going to try to make this work, it has to be with total honesty." David extended his hand across the table. Deal. Sarah shook his hand, feeling like she was making a decision that would change her life forever. She didn't know if it would be for better or worse, but she knew she couldn't live wondering, what if? Just one more thing, David said. What is it, David? When can I meet Sophia? 2 weeks after their lunch at the bakery, Sarah finally gathered the courage to extend the invitation that David had been patiently waiting for. It was a Saturday afternoon, and she had just finished her work at the Silvers' house when she called him. David, would you like to come over for dinner tonight? Sophia's curious to meet you. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that Sarah thought the call had dropped. David? Sorry, it's just, are you sure? I don't want to pressure you. I'm sure, but it's at my place, in the public housing complex. It's nothing like the places you're used to. Sarah, David gently interrupted. Stop that. I want to see where you live, where Sophia grew up, where you built your life together. Can I bring something? You don't need to bring anything, just be yourself, okay? I promise. At 7 in the evening, Sarah was wiping the kitchen table for the 5th time when the doorbell rang. The apartment had never felt so small as it did at that moment. 2 rooms that housed a living room, bedroom and kitchen, with a tiny bathroom and a small laundry area where she hung the clothes on a line. Mum, you're more nervous than I am, observed Sophia, who was sitting on the 2-seater sofa they had bought used the previous year. The girl was wearing her best dress, a blue model with white polka dots that Sarah had sewn by hand, and had styled her curly hair with a ribbon given to her by her teacher. I'm not nervous, I'm organizing things. Sarah smoothed down the simple dress she was wearing and went to open the door. David was standing in the narrow hallway of the building, holding a small bouquet of daisies, not expensive roses, Sarah noted with relief, and a paper bag. He had swapped his suit for jeans and a blue dress shirt, but still looked out of place in this environment. Hi, he said, smiling in a way that showed he was just as nervous as she was. Hi, come in. David stepped into the apartment, and Sarah watched his eyes as he took in the surroundings. There was no judgment in his gaze, just genuine curiosity. He observed the walls painted with cheap paint that was peeling in some spots, the simple but well-kept furniture, the curtains that Sarah had sewn from fabric scraps. Mum, aren't you going to introduce us? Sophia stood up from the sofa, adjusting her dress. Of course. David, this is Sophia. Sophia, this is David. David knelt to be at the girl's height, extending his hand formally. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sophia. Your mom talks about you all the time. Sophia shook his hand, studying him with serious eyes. Nice to meet you. Are you really a billionaire? Sophia, Sarah exclaimed, feeling her face heat up. But David laughed. I am. And are you really the smartest girl in New York City? That's a tough question to answer, Sophia said solemnly. I would need to meet all the kids in New York City to make that comparison. David looked at Sarah with an impressed expression. I see now why you take so much pride in her. Mr. David, Sophia continued, can I ask you some questions? Sophia, let David at least sit down first, Sarah interjected. No, it's fine, David said, settling into the sofa. You can ask whatever you want. Sophia sat in front of him, taking a position that Sarah recognized as her interrogation mode. Why do you like my mom? The question caught David off guard, but he answered thoughtfully. Because your mom is a special person. She's brave, works hard to take care of you, is smart, and makes me laugh. And why does my mom like you? David looked at Sarah, who was in the kitchen trying to pretend she wasn't listening to every word. That's something you'll have to ask her. Sophia nodded, apparently satisfied. Do you have kids? The question made David's smile falter for a moment. I do. One son. He is 15 years old, but we haven't talked in a while. Why? Lily, Sarah called from the kitchen. Some questions are very personal. No, it's okay, David said. It's because I worked too much when he was little and I wasn't a good father. Now he lives with his mother in another country and he's angry with me. Lily processed this information seriously. Do you want to be a good father to him now? I really do. But sometimes when you hurt someone, it takes time for them to forgive you. Mom always says it's never too late to sincerely apologize. David smiled. Your mom is wise. Sarah approached, drying her hands on a dish towel. Lily, how about you show your drawings to David while I finish dinner? Lily dashed to her room and returned with a sketchbook. She sat next to David on the couch and began to show her creations. Drawings of colorful houses, happy families, and fantastic animals made with colored pencils that were already getting small from so much use. This is me and my mom, Lily said, showing a drawing of two figures holding hands in front of a house. And this is how I imagine it would be if we had a dog. Do you want a dog? I do, but my mom says a small apartment isn't a place for a dog, and it also costs money we don't have for food and vaccines. Sarah felt her stomach churn. This was exactly the kind of conversation she wanted to avoid. Lily talking naturally about their financial limitations to someone who could solve all their problems with pocket money. But David simply nodded. Your mom is right. A dog is a big responsibility. You have to make sure you can take care of it properly. Do you have pets? No, my life has always been too hectic for pets. But I was thinking about adopting a cat. Cats are cool, less work than dogs, Lily said with the authority of someone who had extensively researched the subject. Sarah watched their interaction from the kitchen, feeling a mix of emotions. David was being genuine with Lily. He wasn't trying to impress her or win her over with promises. He was talking to her as if she were a real person with opinions. That mattered. Dinner is almost ready, he announced. Lily, can you help set the table? The small Formica table was covered with the floral tablecloth that Sarah reserved for special occasions. She had prepared her best dish, roasted chicken with potatoes and a simple salad, using ingredients she had bought with extra care, calculating every dollar spent. During dinner, Lily completely opened up, telling stories from school, asking questions about David's job, which he explained simply like, I help people find good homes to live in, and sharing her theories on various subjects with the seriousness of a little philosopher. Mr. David, Lily said as they ate dessert, a pudding that Sarah had made with powdered milk and eggs obtained from a neighbor, can I ask you an important question? Of course. Are you going to make my mum cry? David's fork stopped in midair. Sarah felt her heart race. Why are you asking that, sweetheart? Sarah asked. Because Peter's mum from school started dating a guy who seemed nice, but then he left and she was very sad. And I don't want you to be sad. David set down his fork and looked directly into Lily's eyes. Lily, I promise I will do everything I can to never make your mum cry, and if I ever need to leave, it will be by talking things through with both of you, never disappearing without an explanation. Lily nodded, satisfied. Okay, and also if you hurt my mum, I will be very mad at you. That's fair, David agreed, completely serious. I would be mad too if someone hurt my mum. After dinner, Lily asked to show the rest of the apartment to David. Sarah watched as the girl guided him through the room they shared. 2 twin beds that Lily had insisted on arranging as if they were bunk beds, but on the floor, the small bathroom where Lily had organized her child hygiene products in perfect rows, and the laundry area where Sarah kept the ingredients to make cookies. This is where my mom makes the best cookies in the world, Lily explained proudly. She sells them to help pay our bills. I bet they are delicious, David said. Your mom told me about them. Mom, aren't you going to give David a cookie to try? Sarah hurried to get a small box with some cookies she'd made the night before. David tried one, and his eyes widened genuinely. Lily is right. These are the best cookies I've ever had. You're exaggerating, Sarah said, but she was smiling. I'm not exaggerating. Seriously. At 9 o'clock at night, Lily started to yawn, and Sarah announced it was time for a bath and bed. Lily hugged David before heading to the bathroom. Thank you for coming to dinner with us, Mr. David. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for letting me see your home, Lily. It was an honor. While Lily took her bath, Sarah and David were left alone in the small living room. He was looking at a photo on the wall, Sarah and Lily on a beach in Malibu, smiling under a rented umbrella. When was this taken? He asked. Last year, the first time I managed to take Lily to see the ocean. Sarah sat next to him on the couch. I saved money for 6 months to afford 2 nights at a simple motel. David was silent for a moment. Sarah, can I say something? Of course. I grew up in a 5,000 square feet house, with maids, a driver, everything money can buy, but I never saw my mom smile. The way you smile in this photo, I've never seen my family have the bond that you two share. Sarah felt something stir in her chest. David, no, let me finish. I came here today thinking I would see where you live, but actually I found a home, a real family, and that's something no amount of money can buy. Before Sarah could respond, Lily appeared in her pajamas, her hair damp and brushed. Can I say good night to David, Mom? Of course, sweetheart. Lily approached David, who bent down to receive a hug. Good night, Mr. David. Can you come over for dinner more often? David looked at Sarah over Lily's head. If your mom allows it, I would love to. Mom, can he? Sarah felt she was making another decision that would change their lives. Yes, sweetheart. After Lily went to bed, Sarah walked David to the door. They stood in the narrow hallway, and Sarah realized she didn't want him to leave. Thank you, David said, for letting me into your lives. Thank you for being yourself. Lily liked you. And you? Did you like how I was with her? Sarah smiled. I liked it a lot. You were perfect with her. David leaned in and gently kissed Sarah's forehead. Good night, Sarah. I'll talk to you tomorrow. As she listened to his footsteps fading down the hallway, Sarah leaned against the closed door and smiled. For the first time since she found out about David's money, she felt that maybe, just maybe, this could really work out. Inside the room, Lily whispered in the dark, Mom, I like David. He's nice. I liked him too, sweetheart. Now go to sleep. Mom, what is it? Do you think he will become our family? The question caught Sarah off guard. I don't know, Lily. These things take time. Okay, but I think so. He looks at you the way dads look at moms in movies. Sarah smiled in the dark, feeling a cautious hope grow in her chest. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe there really was a future for the three of them. February arrived with the intense heat of New York City and the contagious excitement of Carnival. Sarah had never been much of a party person, but Lily loved the season. The streets were decorated, there was music everywhere, and the whole city seemed more colorful. David, on the other hand, usually spent Carnival working or traveling to places where he could avoid the crowd, but this year would be different. Mom, Mrs. Smith said there's going to be a block party on the street on Sunday. Can we go? Lily asked on a Thursday night while doing her homework at the kitchen table. A carnival block party? Lily, you know those things are full of drunk people and... No, Mom, it's a family-friendly block party. Mrs. Smith said there will be kids, families, and it's well organized. Lily paused, looking hopeful. And you can invite David. Sarah stopped washing the dishes. In the 3 weeks since the dinner at home, David had become a constant presence in their lives. He had dinner with them on Saturdays, took Lily to the park on Sundays, while Sarah made cookies for the week, and he had even started helping the girl with her math homework, discovering he had infinite patience for explaining problems that left Sarah pulling her hair out. "I don't know if David is into carnival parties, sweetheart." "Why don't you ask him?" At that moment, as if he had heard the conversation, Sarah's phone rang. "Hi, David." "Hey, beautiful. How are you guys?" Sarah still felt surprised when he called her that, affectionately, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "We're good. Lily wants to talk to you." Lily practically snatched the phone from her mother's hand. "Hi, David. Do you want to go to a carnival block party with us on Sunday?" Sarah couldn't hear David's response, but she saw Lily's face light up. "Really? You've never been to a block party? Oh, my gosh, you're going to love it. There's music, costumes, confetti." Lily paused. No need for an expensive costume. Mom said we can improvise with the clothes we already have." A few minutes later, Lily handed the phone back to Sarah. "So?" Sarah asked. "David said he's never been to a block party in his life and that he's curious. He's coming." On Sunday morning, Sarah woke up early to prepare the improvised costumes. For Lily, she used an old yellow shirt, a colourful skirt she had received from a client, and made a headband with crepe paper flowers, left over from a school project. For herself, she chose a white blouse, a flowy skirt she rarely wore, and a colourful scarf that she tied in her hair. When David arrived at 2 in the afternoon, Sarah couldn't help but laugh. He was dressed in a white polo shirt, denim shorts and sneakers, clearly a man used to suits, trying to look casual. "You look very clean for a carnival block party," Sarah said. "I literally didn't know how to dress. I Googled outfit for a carnival block party and got some really confusing things." Lily came running from the kitchen. "David, you came. Look at my costume. You look beautiful, Lily. You look like a flower princess." "And you? Where's your costume?" David looked at Sarah, pleading for help. "I don't have a costume." "Mom, we need to dress up David." Sarah looked David up and down, thinking. "Lily, grab that red scarf from my closet, and David, take off that polo." "What do you mean, take off the polo?" "You're not in an office, you're going to a block party. Relax." David took off the polo shirt, revealing a basic white t-shirt underneath. Sarah tied the red scarf around his head and grabbed a pair of sunglasses that Lily used for playing. "There! Now you look like a pirate." David looked at himself in the small mirror in the living room and laughed. "Never. I thought I would become a pirate at 42. "It's the first of many disguises," said Lily, taking his hand. "Let's go. The music is already starting." The street festival was happening on 42nd Street, just a few blocks from the bakery where Sarah and David had reconciled. It was exactly as Mrs. Smith had promised, a family event with live music, kids running around in makeshift costumes, adults drinking beer from plastic cups, and everyone dancing in the street. Sarah watched David as he absorbed the atmosphere. Hundreds of people of all ages, social classes and colors dancing together on the asphalt. Vendors offering cold water and beer, mothers chasing after small children. Young people in elaborate costumes posing for photos. Grandparents sitting in plastic chairs clapping to the rhythm of the music. "It's intense," David commented, having to speak loudly because of the music. "Do you want to leave?" Sarah asked, suddenly worried that it might be too much for him. "No, it's different, but it's cool." Lily had disappeared into the crowd, but Sarah quickly spotted her. She was dancing with a group of kids near the stage, completely at ease in the colourful chaos. "She's not afraid of anything," David observed. "Lily has always been like that, brave." Sarah waved to her daughter, who waved back before continuing to dance. "I'm the cautious one." And is that bad? Sometimes. Sarah looked around, seeing David trying to adapt to the environment. How are you feeling? It must be very different from the places where you usually spend your Sundays. David was silent for a moment, watching a nearby family, a father, mother, and 3 small children, all dressed as superheroes with capes made from old sheets, laughing as they danced to a song they clearly didn't know well. You know, Sarah, I usually spend my Sundays alone in my apartment, working or watching TV. Sometimes I go to the club, but it's always the same. People talking about business, complaining about employees, planning expensive trips. He paused. Here, look at how many different people are getting along. Rich, poor, old, young, everyone equal. Everyone equal? Everyone happy. Everyone enjoying the music, the company. No one is worried about cars, designer clothes, bank accounts. Sarah followed his gaze and saw what he was seeing, a true democracy of joy. The bakery owner dancing next to an executive who had clearly stepped out of an imported car. Teenagers from the outskirts sharing beer with college students. Grandparents teaching dance steps to grandchildren who had never seen them before. This is how Lily grew up, said Sarah, in this mix. That's why she talks to everyone the same, isn't ashamed of anything. And you, how did you grow up? Sarah hesitated. She rarely talked about her childhood, similar to this, community, neighbors helping each other, street parties. It's just that... She stopped, unsure if she should continue. Just that what? Just that when you grow up like this, you learn that there are worlds where you don't belong. And you learn to stay in your place. David looked at her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. And what is your place, Sarah? Before she could answer, Lily came running up, holding the hand of a girl her age. Mom, David! This is Julia, my friend. I'm from school. Julia, these are my mom and David, who is... Lily stopped, realizing she didn't know how to define David. Who is your mom's special friend? David completed, bending down to greet Julia. Hi, Mr. David. Lily said you're very rich but very nice. Sarah felt her face heat up. Lily... It's true, Mom. I told Julia that you found a boyfriend who is rich but doesn't show off. David laughed. Thanks for the recommendation, Lily. Do you want to dance with us? Julia asked. The music is really good. Before Sarah could protest, Lily and Julia were pulling her and David closer to the stage. The music was an upbeat pop song that Sarah knew, and Lily began to dance with the naturalness of someone who grew up listening to that rhythm. I don't know how to dance to pop music, David confessed to Sarah. No one is judging your technique, Sarah replied, starting to move to the rhythm of the music. Just feel the music and move your body. David tried to imitate her movements, clearly out of his comfort zone, but persisting with a determination that made Sarah smile. He was so focused on trying to get the steps right that he didn't notice when some people around began to look at them. Psst, Sarah whispered to him. Relax, you're overthinking it. It's just that I never what? Never danced in public. Never did anything like this. In public. Sarah stopped dancing for a second, looking at him. David, do you want to leave? You seem uncomfortable. No, I don't want to leave. He took her hands. I want to learn. Teach me? For the next hour, Sarah taught David the basic steps of dancing, laughing at his awkward attempts, correcting his posture, showing him how to loosen his shoulders. Lily and Julia danced beside them, sometimes stopping to give tips on David's performance. Uncle David, you're too stiff, Lily shouted over the music. My mom dances better than you. Lily, don't call him uncle, Sarah protested. Why not? He practically lives at home on the weekends. David stopped dancing, looking at Lily. You can call me whatever you want, Lily. If you want to call me uncle, I like that. The simplicity of the response stirred something in Sarah's chest. David wasn't trying to force closeness with Lily. He was letting the girl dictate the rhythm of their relationship. As the sun began to set and the festival started to disperse, the three of them were sweaty, tired, and with confetti stuck in their hair. David had bought water for everyone, and Sarah had received a lollipop from a street vendor, and she felt more relaxed than she remembered feeling in years. "Can I say something?" David said as they walked back to the car he had parked a few blocks away. "Sure. Today was the best Sunday I've had in I don't know how many years." Lily, who was walking between them, held David's hand. "Can we do this again next year?" "If your mom wants, I would love to." Sarah looked at David. Messy hair, sweaty t-shirt, a slightly crooked red bandana on his head, sunglasses that Lily had insisted he keep on, and saw not the billionaire businessman, but a man who had spent the entire afternoon out of his comfort zone just to be with them. "David," she said when they reached the car, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What did you think, really?" He paused for a moment, helping Lily into the back seat of the car. "I think I understood something important today." "What?" "I understood why you and Lily are so happy, even with so little money." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" "You are part of something bigger, a community. You have neighbors who care about you, real friends, moments like this where everyone is equal." David paused. "I have a lot of money, Sarah, but I've never had that. I've never had a real community." "And what do you think about that?" "I think maybe I've been measuring wealth by the wrong yardstick my whole life." During the drive back home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the day of fun. Sarah and David talked quietly about music, about the diversity they had seen at the street festival, about how different it was from the parties each of them was used to. When they arrived at the public housing complex, David carried the sleeping Lily up to the apartment. After Sarah put her to bed, they chatted in the small living room, still processing the day's experience. "Sarah," David finally said, "can I confess something to you?" "Sure." "When I was little, my dad always said that people like those at the street festival today were uneducated, without class. He taught me to keep my distance. And today, what did you think? Today, I saw more education, more kindness, and more genuine class than I see at most social events I attend." Sarah smiled. "Lily has a theory about that." "What is it?" "She says there are two types of people, those who share what they have and those who hide what they have, and that the happiest people are always the ones who share." David was silent for a long moment. "Your daughter is wiser than many adults I know." "Yeah, sometimes I think I'm the one who needs to learn from her." When David left that night, Sarah stood by the window watching his car drive away through the streets of the public housing complex. For the first time since she met him, she had the feeling that maybe their different worlds could somehow meet halfway. March brought a routine that Sarah had never imagined possible. David had become a natural part of their lives, dining with them at least 3 times a week, taking Lily to the park when Sarah needed to work on weekends, and he had even started picking her up from school occasionally. But it was on a Tuesday, in the middle of the month, that everything changed. Sarah was working at the Williams family home in the Upper East Side, vacuuming the living room, when she heard the key turning in the lock. She was surprised because Mrs. Williams had said she would only return from her trip on Thursday. She quickly turned off the vacuum and went to the entrance to explain her presence in the house. "Mrs. Williams, you returned early from the trip." Sarah stopped mid-sentence, feeling the blood run cold in her veins. David was standing in the living room entrance, holding a key and looking at her with the same shocked expression she knew was etched on her own face. "Sarah?" His voice came out as a whisper. "David? What are you doing here? How did you get in?" The words tumbled out, her mind trying to process the impossible situation. David looked at the key in his hands, then at Sarah, dressed in the blue uniform she wore for work, then at the vacuum still plugged in. The realization was slow but devastating for both of them. This is my house, David said, his voice heavy with painful understanding. Sarah felt her legs weaken. Your house? But I've been working for the Williams family for 2 years. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Williams. Sarah, I am David Williams. Fernanda is my ex-wife. David dropped the keys on the entryway table. I didn't know you worked here. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked around the living room where she had vacuumed hundreds of times, where she had cleaned every object, where she had folded David's clothes without knowing they were his. The photos of him with his ex-wife that she had always discreetly ignored, the suits she had hung in the closet with care, the business documents she had organized on the desk. You knew, Sarah said, her voice coming out quieter than she intended. You knew I worked here. Sarah, I swear on everything sacred that I didn't know. Fernanda always hired the staff. I never... David stopped, running his hands through his hair. Oh my God, how many times were you here when I was traveling? Every Tuesday and every Friday for 2 years. Sarah felt a mix of humiliation and anger rising in her throat. Twice a week I cleaned your house, David. Cleaned your bathroom, folded your clothes, organized your things. Sarah, I never saw you here because you hire the staff to be invisible. Marina's voice rose, laden with a pain she could no longer contain. You don't even realize we exist. David stood frozen, absorbing the painful truth of her words. Sarah, please let me explain. Explain what? That for 2 months you pretended to know me as if we were equals, while I was your housekeeper. Marina began to gather her cleaning supplies. With abrupt movements, explain that you let me talk about my life, about my struggles, knowing exactly what my situation was. I didn't know. Sarah, I swear I didn't know. How could you not know? Marina stopped packing her supplies and faced him. How can someone not know who works in their house? David opened his mouth to respond but couldn't. Because the truth was he really didn't know. For the last 3 years since the separation, he had moved to an apartment in the city centre and only used the house sporadically. Mrs. Williams continued to live there until the division of assets was resolved and he had left all domestic management in her hands. Sarah, I know how this looks, but I really didn't know. In recent years I've hardly been here. I only came today to pick up some documents because... David, stop! Marina leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling exhausted. It doesn't matter if you knew or not. The fact is, I am your housekeeper. You are my boss. And for 2 months I thought that we were equals. We are equals, Sarah. Marina laughed, but it was a bitter sound. David, I iron your shirts. I clean your toilet. I organize your sock drawer. How are we equals? Because none of that defines who you are. It does. It defines exactly who I am in your world. Marina grabbed the bag where she kept her cleaning supplies. I am the woman you didn't even notice existed until you met her on a dating app. David took a step toward her. Sarah, don't leave like this. Let's talk about this. Talk about what? Marina stopped at the door, looking at him one last time. David, you brought me to dinner at your poor house, in the public housing complex, as if it were a social experiment. Look how the poor live, how happy they are even with nothing. Meanwhile, I cleaned your rich house every week. It wasn't like that, Sarah. It was. And the worst part is that I believed it. I believed you liked me, that we had something real. We have something real? Marina shook her head, tears she refused to let fall burning her eyes. David, I can't work here anymore, and we can't see each other anymore. Sarah, don't do this, please. David, how Am I supposed to look at you knowing that for 2 years I was invisible? How am I supposed to believe you see me as a person, as an equal, knowing that I am just another employee of yours? You are not just another employee. I am. The difference is that now you know my name. Marina left the house without looking back, leaving David standing in the living room where they had discovered each other in a way neither was prepared to face. That night, Marina arrived home earlier than usual. Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table under the supervision of Mrs. Smith, who immediately sensed that something was wrong. "My daughter, you look like you're at a funeral. Did something happen at work?" Marina sat heavily in a chair, still processing the events of the day. "Mrs. Smith, can I ask a favor? Can you stay with Lily tonight? I need to think." "Of course, my dear. But do you want to talk about what happened?" "Mom, you're acting strange," Lily observed, looking up from her notebook. "Did something happen?" Marina looked at her daughter, curly hair tied up with the elastic that David had bought at a dollar store when they were at the park the previous week, wearing the shirt he had complimented, saying that the color looked beautiful with her eyes. Everything reminded her of David. Everything had been contaminated by today's discovery. "Nothing happened, sweetheart. I'm just tired. Is David coming for dinner tonight? It's Thursday. He always comes on Thursdays." The question hit Marina like a punch to the stomach. She had completely forgotten that David had been having dinner with them every Thursday for over a month. Lily was expecting him. "No, sweetheart. David isn't coming tonight." "Why? Is he sick?" "No, Lily. He's not coming anymore." Lily stopped writing, looking at her mother with that serious expression she took on when she sensed something important was happening. "Mom, what happened to David?" Marina looked at Mrs. Smith, who made a discreet gesture indicating she could explain later. "Lily, sometimes adults discover things that make things complicated. David and we're not going to see each other anymore." "But why? You were happy. He likes you and you like him." Lily's words cut through Marina like a blade. It was true. She liked David. A lot. And he liked her. But how could that continue now that she knew the truth? "It's complicated, sweetheart, but I like David. He teaches me math, takes me to the park, tells stories." Lily's voice began to tremble. "He can't just disappear from our lives." Marina felt her heart break. Lily had grown attached to David, exactly what she had tried to avoid from the beginning. And now the girl would be hurt because of today's devastating discovery. "Lily, I know you like him. I like him too. But sometimes things don't work out the way we want." "That's not fair," Lily shouted, throwing the pencil on the table. "Every time I start to like someone, they leave." Lily's outburst caught Sarah off guard. The girl rarely shouted, rarely showed anger openly. "Lily, calm down." "I don't want to calm down. Why can't David come here anymore? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Lily." "You did. You always do this. Whenever someone likes us, you find a reason to push them away." Lily's accusation was like a slap. Sarah looked at her daughter, seeing tears of anger in her brown eyes, and realized that Lily was not wrong. She really had a history of pushing people away who got too close. Mrs. Smith discreetly stood up. "I'm going to make some tea for you two, and you will talk this out properly." Once they were alone, Sarah sat next to Lily. "Honey, do you want to tell me why you're so angry?" Lily took a deep breath, trying to control herself. "Mom, I know you've always taken care of me alone. I know it was hard when my dad left. I know you work a lot to give me everything I need." Sarah nodded, surprised by the maturity of her daughter's words. "But I don't want you to be alone forever just because you're scared. David likes you, Mom, and you like him, and he's nice to me. Why isn't that enough?" Lily's simple question cut straight to the heart of the matter. Why should the fact that she had been David's housekeeper destroy everything they had built together? Why should social differences matter more than feelings? Lily, it's more complicated than that. Why is it complicated? Because he has more money than us? Sarah paused, realizing she didn't have a convincing answer to give an 8-year-old. How could she explain wounded pride, social humiliation, class differences to someone who saw the world so directly? "Mom," Lily continued, "you always taught me that what matters is how people treat us, not how much money they have. David has always treated you and me with kindness. Doesn't that count?" Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. David. Lily looked at the phone, then at Sarah. "Answer, Mom. At least listen to what he has to say." Sarah hesitated, but eventually answered. "Sarah, thank God you picked up. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you." "David, I don't think we have anything to discuss," Sarah said, but her voice didn't sound as firm as she would have liked. Lily was beside her, clearly listening to every word. "Sarah, I know you're hurt, and I understand. But at least let me explain how things really happened." "Mom," Lily whispered, "talk to him." Sarah looked at her daughter, seeing hope in her brown eyes, and felt her determination waver. "5 minutes, David, just 5 minutes." "Can I come over?" "No, just talk on the phone." David took a deep breath on the other end of the line. "Sarah, after you left today, I called Mrs. Williams. I wanted to understand how I didn't know you worked there. And Mrs. Williams told me that you were hired 2 years ago when I was traveling a lot because of the company's expansion to Los Angeles. She said she always scheduled your visits for the days I wasn't home because I don't like having domestic help when I'm working from home." Sarah felt a pang of something. She didn't know if it was relief or more humiliation. And does that make a difference? It makes a difference because it proves that I really didn't know Sarah, and it makes a difference because it showed me how I lived isolated from my own home, from my own life. "David, let me finish, please. Mrs. Williams told me that you were always exceptional, that you took care of the house as if it were your own, that you were punctual, dedicated, honest. She said that when you two separated, one of the things she worried about the most was losing you as an employee." Lily gestured for Sarah to put the phone on speaker. Sarah hesitated but eventually gave in. "Sarah, are you there?" "I am." "David, that doesn't change anything that happened today." "It does change things. It changes because it made me realize something important." David's voice sounded clearer on speakerphone. "For 2 months, I got to know you as Sarah, a smart, brave woman, a dedicated mother, an honest person. Today, I discovered that you are also someone who took care of my home for 2 years, with a dedication I've never seen in anyone. That doesn't diminish you, Sarah. It elevates you." Lily looked at Sarah with an expression that said, "Didn't I tell you he was nice?" "David, you don't understand. For 2 years, I was invisible to you. That hurts. I know it hurts, and I know it was wrong. But Sarah, I want you to know that if I had met you back then, I would have been just as impressed with you as I was when I met you on the app. How can you be sure of that? Because I know you now. I know your character, your strength, your intelligence. Those qualities didn't just appear out of nowhere in the last 2 months, Sarah. You've always been this way." Sarah fell silent, processing. Sarah took advantage of the pause. "David, this is Sarah." "Hi, Sarah. How are you?" "I'm sad because my mum said you won't come to dinner with us anymore." "Sarah, your mum is upset with me for a very serious reason. I understand if she doesn't want to see me again. But I want you to come. You can't disappear from our lives just because you found out my mum was cleaning your house." Sarah's frankness made David laugh on the other end of the line. "Sarah, it's not that simple." "Why isn't it simple? Do you like my mum?" "I like her a lot." Does she like you? David hesitated. I think so, but... Mum, do you like David? Sarah asked during breakfast. Sarah looked at her mother, feeling cornered. Sarah, answer, Mum. Yes, Sarah admitted quietly. I do like him. So what's the problem? Sarah asked, with the relentless logic of children. The problem, Sarah said, taking the phone back, is that things aren't so simple in the adult world. Sarah, David intervened, can I suggest something? What? Can we meet tomorrow, somewhere neutral where we can talk about this properly? David, I don't know if... Mom, a go, Sarah insisted. At least talk to him properly. Sarah sighed. Okay, but I choose the place and the rules. I'll accept any conditions. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock in the afternoon at Central Park, and David, no trying to resolve this with money or gifts. It's just a conversation. I promise. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a mix of anxiety and determination. She had spent the night thinking about what to say to David, trying to understand her own feelings about yesterday's discovery. Mom, are you going to wear the nice dress to meet David? Sarah asked during breakfast. I'm not dressing up for him, Sarah. It's just a conversation. But you're nervous. I can see it. Sarah stopped stirring the sugar into her coffee. I'm nervous, yes. It's normal to be nervous when having an important conversation. Mum, can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you think being a cleaning lady is something to be ashamed of? The question caught Sarah off guard. I don't think it's shameful, Sarah. Work dignifies a person. Then why did you get so upset when you found out you were cleaning David's house? Sarah looked at her daughter, once again, impressed by her perception. Because I felt deceived, like he was playing with me. But he didn't know, right? You said he didn't know. Yeah, he didn't know. So he wasn't deceiving you. You were deceiving each other without knowing. The simplicity of Sarah's logic made Sarah pause. Indeed, if David didn't know she was cleaning his house, how could he have been deliberately deceiving her? Sarah, you're very smart for an 8-year-old. I know. Mrs. Smith always says that. Sarah took the last sip of her milk coffee. Mom, do you want some advice? I do. Talk to David with an open heart, like you taught me to do when I argue with a friend at school. At exactly 2 o'clock, Sarah was sitting on a bench in Central Park, watching the afternoon crowd. She had chosen that location intentionally. It was public, busy, far from both her home and the places David frequented. He arrived punctually, dressed more casually than usual, jeans and a dress shirt, no tie. He sat next to her on the bench, keeping a respectful distance. Thank you for agreeing to talk, David said. You're welcome. But David, before you say anything, I need you to understand something. I'm listening. Sarah turned to face him. For 2 years, I entered your house twice a week. I cleaned your room, organized your things, saw your photos, your documents, your life, and you never saw me. Not once. David lowered his head. I know, and that's unforgivable. It's not a matter of forgiveness, David. It's about understanding what that means. To you, I was part of the furniture, someone who appeared and disappeared without a trace. Sarah, let me finish. Sarah took a deep breath. When I met you on the app, for the first time in my life I felt seen by someone. You paid attention to what I said, cared about my problems, laughed at my jokes. I felt special. You are special. Am I? Or am I only special when you don't know I'm your housekeeper? The question hung in the air between them. David remained silent for a long moment before responding. Sarah, can I tell you a story? Sure. When I was a child, my mum had a housekeeper named Mrs. Smith. She worked in our home for 15 years. She took care of me when I Was sick, drove me to school when my parents traveled, made my favorite cake on my birthday. Sarah listened in silence. When I turned 18 and went to college, Mrs. Smith retired. Only then did I realize I had never asked where she lived, if she had family, what her dreams were. David paused. She took care of me for 15 years, and I didn't even know the names of her children. And what does that have to do with us? It has to do with the fact that I was raised not to see people like Mrs. Smith. And, by extension, not to see people like you. David turned to Sarah. But getting to know you changed that. It made me question everything I learned about human value, about what really matters in life. David, you may have changed, but that doesn't change the fact that for 2 years you passed by me without seeing me. You're right, and I'll carry that guilt forever. David took a deep breath. But Sarah, can I ask you something? Depends on what it is. Don't let what happened in the past destroy what we've built in the present. Sarah looked around the square. Children playing in the playground, elderly people playing chess, street vendors offering their goods, real life happening around them. David, how am I supposed to look at you and not remember that for 2 years I was invisible to you? The same way I can look at you and always remember that for 2 years you took care of my home as if it were yours, without me even knowing your name. The answer caught Sarah by surprise. What do you mean? Sarah, finding out that you worked in my home didn't make me think less of you. It made me think less of myself. David paused. It made me realize how I was living an empty, isolated life without real connections. And now? Now I know what I'm missing when I don't pay attention to the people around me. I know there's a difference between being served and being cared for. And I know that you, Sarah, were not just someone who cleaned my house. You were someone who cared for it. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. David. Sarah, I can't go back in time and change the fact that I didn't see you before. But I can promise that from now on, I will always see you, not as my former housekeeper, not as someone who cleans houses, but as Sarah, the woman I fell in love with. The words came out so naturally that both fell silent for a moment, absorbing what David had just confessed. You fell in love with me? Sarah asked softly. David looked directly into her eyes. I fell in love, completely. And it wasn't because of the dating app, it wasn't despite your job, it was because of you, for the incredible person you are. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes, but this time they weren't from anger or humiliation, they were from something she was afraid to name. David, I also fell in love with you, but I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that when the novelty wears off, when you go back to your usual world, I will become invisible again. David moved a little closer on the bench. Sarah, can I guarantee you one thing? My usual world changed when I met you. I can't go back to the life I had before. I don't want to go back. How can I be sure of that? Because this morning I did something I never thought I would do. What? I fired the cleaning company that takes care of my apartment. Sarah furrowed her brow. Why? Because I realized that for 3 years I've been living in an apartment that is cleaned by people I've never seen, never talked to, never cared to know. David paused. And that's not living. That's empty existence. And now? Now I want to know the people who are part of my life. I want to know the names of the people who clean my apartment, who deliver my mail, who serve my coffee at the office. David smiled. You opened my eyes to a world that has always existed around me, but that I never saw. Sarah remained silent for a long moment. David, if we try to make this work, it's going to be hard. Very hard. I know. The people in your social circle will look at me and see a former housekeeper. And so? And then it will be awkward. For you too. David took Sarah's hand. Sarah, In the last 2 months, I've been happier with you and Lily than in the last 10 years of my life. If someone has a problem with that, the problem is theirs, not ours." Sarah looked at their hands, hers calloused from work, his smooth and well-groomed, different but fitting perfectly together. "Okay," she finally said. "Okay, what?" "Okay, let's try, but with total honesty from now on. No omissions, no secrets. Promise." "And David?" "Yes?" "Lily is waiting for you for dinner tonight, and if you don't show up, she's going to be really mad at me." David laughed, pulling Sarah into a hug right there on the bench in the square. "I can't disappoint Lily. She's much smarter than both of us put together." "She really is," Sarah agreed, allowing herself to relax in his arms for the first time since the devastating discovery the day before. As they embraced in the middle of the busy square, Sarah felt that maybe, just maybe, love could truly overcome the differences that seemed insurmountable. After all, if an 8-year-old could see the simplicity of the situation, maybe they could too. May arrived with news that neither of them expected. Lily was radiant when she came home from school on a Thursday, waving a white envelope like a trophy. "Mom! Mom, I passed!" Lily shouted, running through the small apartment until she found Sarah in the kitchen, preparing the ingredients for the late-night cookies. "Passed what, sweetheart?" Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and took the envelope Lily offered. "In the private school selection. Remember that the teacher signed up some students to compete for a scholarship? I won." Sarah opened the envelope with trembling hands, quickly reading the document. It was an official letter from St. Mary's Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the area, informing her that Lily had been selected for a full merit-based scholarship. "Lily, this is amazing." Sarah hugged her daughter, but inside she felt a mix of joy and concern. "When do classes start?" "In August. I'll be able to study at a school with a science lab, a huge library, a sports court." Lily paused to catch her breath with each new discovery. "And there's an English course included." Sarah smiled, but her mind was already calculating the indirect costs. Uniforms, specialized school supplies, transportation to a farther school, possible extracurricular activities. "Mom, aren't you happy?" Lily noticed her mother's worried expression. I'm very happy, sweetheart. So proud. It's just that it's a big change, right? We need to talk about some things. Practical things." At that moment, the phone rang. David, as always, in the late afternoon. "Hi, David," Sarah answered, still holding the school letter. "Hi, beautiful. How was your day?" "Mom, tell him!" Lily practically shouted. "Tell him about school!" Sarah reported the news to David, trying to keep her tone neutral, but he immediately noticed the concern in her voice. "Sarah, that's fantastic. Lily must be over the moon." "She is. But David, I need to be realistic about the costs this will involve. Can we talk about it tonight? I'll bring pizza to celebrate." "David, it's not a matter of celebration. It's a matter of—" "Sarah," he gently interrupted, "it's an incredible achievement for Lily. It deserves to be celebrated. We'll sort out the practical details later." 2 hours later, David arrived with 2 large pizzas, soda, and a small bouquet of flowers for Lily. White daisies, nothing extravagant. "Congratulations, genius," David said, handing the flowers to Lily, who blushed with joy. "Thank you. Can you believe I'm going to study at a school with a pool?" "I can absolutely believe it. You earned every bit of that scholarship." During dinner, Lily didn't stop talking about the new school, the labs, the library, the possibilities that were opening up. David listened with genuine attention, asking questions, showing real interest in the girls' plans. Sarah watched their interaction, feeling her heart tighten. David was genuinely happy for Lily's achievement, but she couldn't stop thinking about the expenses this change would represent. After Lily went to bed, Sarah and David stayed talking in the small living room. "Sarah, what's bothering you so much?" David asked, noticing she had been quiet since dinner. David, a private school has costs that go far beyond the tuition. Uniform, special supplies, transportation. Sarah paused. And there's something that bothers me. What? How is it that a girl from a public housing complex was selected for a scholarship at a school where the children of business people study? David was silent for a moment. Sarah, are you insinuating that I interfered in the selection? I'm asking. The direct response made David sigh. Sarah, I understand your distrust, but I swear I didn't interfere. I didn't even know Lily had applied for this selection. How can I be sure? Do you want me to prove it? I do. David took out his phone and made a call in front of Sarah. Mrs. Williams, hi, it's David. Listen, do you know anyone at St. Mary's Academy? Oh, really? Can you get me the contact of the principal? No, it's not for me. It's to clarify a doubt. 10 minutes later, David was on the phone with the school's principal, on speakerphone so Sarah could hear. Dr. Helena, my name is David Williams. A friend of mine's daughter was selected for a scholarship at your school, and we would like to understand better how the selection process worked. Of course, Mr. Williams. What is the student's name? Lily Johnson. Sarah heard the sound of papers shuffling on the other end of the line. Ah, yes, Lily Johnson. What a brilliant girl. She was one of the 5 children selected from over 200 candidates. And how was the selection? We administered tests in English, math, and general knowledge, as well as an essay. Lily had the second highest overall score, and her essay was simply exceptional for an 8-year-old. Sarah felt a mix of relief and pride. Did the school have any external recommendations for this selection? David asked. No, sir. It's a process entirely based on merit. In fact, the tests are identified only by numbers without names to ensure impartiality. After hanging up, David looked at Sarah. Satisfied. Satisfied, Sarah smiled for the first time since receiving the letter. Sorry for doubting. You don't need to apologize. It's natural after everything. Sarah moved closer to him on the sofa. David, can I ask you a question? Always. If you could have interfered in the selection, would you have? David thought carefully before answering. Honestly, probably yes, because I want the best for Lily, but it would have been wrong, and I know that. The honesty of the answer made Sarah smile. Thank you for being sincere. But Sarah, now that we know Lily deserved this opportunity, can we talk about the practical part? David, I can't accept your financial help for Lily's school. Why not? Because it would be like accepting that I'm dependent on you and I'm not. David was silent for a moment. Sarah, what if it wasn't help? What if it was an investment? What do you mean? What if I offered you a job? A real job with a salary where you could use your intelligence? Sarah frowned. What kind of job? Administrative coordinator for one of my projects. Sarah, I've watched you work. I've seen how you organize things, how you solve problems. You have a natural talent for management. David, before you refuse, let me explain. It's a social project I'm starting, a microfinance program for small entrepreneurs. I need someone to coordinate activities, organize documentation, make contact with beneficiaries. Sarah looked at him with suspense. The salary would be commensurate with the position, $3,500 to start, with benefits. No favors, Sarah. It would be work. David, that sounds like what? Sounds like you're creating a job to help me. I'm creating a job because I need someone competent for this role, and you are the most competent person I know for it. Sarah fell silent, processing the proposal. A real job would mean stability. It would mean being able to pay for the costs of Lily's new school. It would mean professional dignity. Can I think about it? Of course, but Sarah, what? Regardless of your answer about the job, Lily is going to that school. If you need help with uniforms, transportation, anything, I will help. Not as charity, but because she is important to me too now." David's declaration. Something stirred in Sarah's chest. "David, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Why do you care so much about Lily?" David fell silent for a long moment. "Because when I see you with her, I see the kind of dad I wish I had been, and I see the kind of family I wish I had had. And your son, have you heard from him?" David's face closed off a bit. "A little. My ex-wife sometimes sends me pictures. He's growing up, going to college in the United States." "David, have you tried talking to him directly?" "I have. A few times. He's still very hurt with me, and he has every right to be." Sarah took David's hand. "You know, Lily taught me something important the other day." "What?" "She said it's never too late to genuinely apologize." "I've already apologized." "David, there's a difference between saying you're sorry and asking for forgiveness." "What do you mean?" "Saying you're sorry is acknowledging that you were wrong. Asking for forgiveness is showing that you've changed." Sarah paused. "Maybe your son needs to see that you've changed, not just hear that you regret it." David looked at Sarah with an expression that mixed pain and hope. "How do I show that I've changed if he doesn't give me the opportunity? Maybe by living differently, maybe by being a different example of the man he knew." "Do you think that—" "David, I don't know if you two will be able to reconcile, but I know that if you continue being the dad you are for Lily, present, interested, caring, maybe one day your son will see that you've learned to be different." David squeezed Sarah's hand. "How did you get so wise?" "Raising a daughter alone. Life teaches a lot when you have no choice but to learn." They sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "Sarah," David finally said, "about the job. It's a serious offer. Think it over. But know that it would be great for the project to have someone like you. How can you be so sure if you've never seen me work professionally? Because I see you working every day. I see how you organize your lives, how you solve problems, how you make tough decisions." David smiled. "And because Fernanda told me that in 2 years you've never been late, never missed without notice, never left anything undone. That's the definition of professionalism." Sarah felt a wave of pride. For the first time, someone was recognizing her professional qualities, seeing value in her skills beyond the ability to clean houses. "Okay," she finally said, "I'll seriously consider your proposal." "Great. But David?" "Yes?" "If I accept, I want it to be real work, with accountability, goals, real responsibilities, no favors." David smiled. "It wouldn't be any other way. You're too competent for a favor job." That night, after David left, Sarah lay next to Lily thinking about the changes happening in their lives. The new school, the job offer, the evolution of her relationship with David. "Mom," Lily whispered in the dark, "are you awake?" "I am, sweetheart. I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "The new school. What if I can't keep up? What if the other kids don't like me?" Sarah turned to hug her daughter. "Lily, you passed a highly competitive selection. That means you have what it takes to be there. But what if they find out we're poor?" The question made Sarah pause. "Lily, why would that be a problem?" Because sometimes people treat us differently when they know." Sarah felt her heart tighten as she realized that Lily, at 8 years old, had already noticed the social divisions that existed in the world. "Lily, look at me." Sarah turned on the small lamp. "Being poor is not a reason to be ashamed. Being dishonest, being rude, being cruel, those are reasons to be ashamed." Lily nodded, but Sarah could see that there was still insecurity in her daughter's eyes. "Sweetheart, You're going to that school because you deserve it, because you're smart, hard-working, dedicated, and if someone can't see that, the problem is with them, not you. What if I miss my old school? It's normal to miss it, but you know what's also normal? Feeling curiosity, excitement, wanting to discover new things. Lily smiled for the first time since they started talking. "Mum, will you be able to pay for everything I need?" Sarah took a deep breath. "We'll manage, sweetheart. Together we always do. With David's help? Maybe. But the important thing is that you'll have this opportunity. You deserve it." As Lily fell asleep, Sarah stayed awake, planning for the future. For the first time in years, she felt that there were real possibilities for change in their lives. Not just to survive, but to thrive. David's job offer represented more than money. It represented recognition, professional dignity, the chance to use her intelligence in a broader way. And if it worked out, maybe she could finally offer Lily not just love and dedication, but also the opportunities the girl deserved. June arrived with the first major test of the resilience of Sarah and David's relationship, an event neither of them expected, but that would put all their convictions and promises to the test in a way that only real life can do. Sarah had accepted David's job offer 2 weeks earlier. The work on the microfinance project was exactly as he had promised, challenging, important, and nothing like a favor. She spent her mornings organizing documentation for small entrepreneurs seeking credit and her afternoons visiting beneficiaries to monitor the development of their businesses. It was real, work with real responsibilities, and she was discovering talents she didn't even know she had. Lily was preparing to enter the new school in August, full of expectations and some natural fears. David had insisted on covering the uniform and school supplies, an investment in the future, he called it. Marina had agreed to the condition that it would be a loan she would pay in installments. Everything seemed to be falling into place when, one Thursday afternoon, Marina received a call that would change the course of their lives. "Hello, Marina. This is Amanda, David's ex-wife. Can we talk?" Marina was in the project office organizing spreadsheets when she answered the phone. The name Amanda made her heart race immediately. "Hi, sure, we can talk." "I'm in New York City for a few days sorting out issues from the divorce. I would like to meet you in person. Can you have lunch with me today?" The formality in Amanda's tone immediately put Marina on alert. "I can, but may I ask why?" "I prefer to talk in person. How about the plaza at 2? Marina looked at the simple outfit she was wearing, black dress pants and a white blouse, the most executive look she could put together with her limited wardrobe. The plaza was one of the most expensive places in New York City. "Amanda, I would prefer a more casual place." "Marina, I won't judge you by your clothes or the place. I just want to talk at a quiet table. Is that okay?" An hour later, Marina was sitting at a table in the most expensive restaurant she had ever been to in her life, waiting for the woman who had been married to David for 10 years and mother to the son he had lost contact with. Amanda arrived promptly, an elegant woman in her 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing a dress that Marina recognized as being from some high-end brand, and carrying a purse that probably cost more than her salary for 3 months. "Marina, I'm Amanda. Nice to meet you." They greeted each other politely, and Marina immediately felt the weight of the social difference between them. Amanda belonged to David's world in a way that Marina never would. "Thank you for accepting my invitation," Amanda said after they had placed their orders. A simple salad for Marina and a fancy dish that she couldn't even pronounce the name of for Amanda. "You're welcome, although I must confess I'm curious about the reason." Amanda smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Marina, I'll be direct. David talked about you." "What did he say?" He said he's dating you. He talked about your daughter. He said that he's happy. Marina didn't know if this was good or bad. And does that bother you? It bothers me because I've known David for 15 years. I know exactly how he operates. How does he operate? Amanda took a sip of the expensive red wine she had ordered. David is a man who easily falls in love with new things, with projects, with people, with ideas, but when the novelty wears off, what? He loses interest and moves on to the next. Amanda's words hit Marina like a punch to the stomach, but she tried to maintain her composure. And you think I'm just a novelty to him? Marina, you seem like an intelligent person. So, I'll tell you the truth. Amanda leaned over the table. David is at a stage in his life where he's questioning his priorities. Recently, he lost some important business deals. He's going through a typical midlife crisis. Marina listened in silence. You represent everything he thinks he wants right now. Simplicity, authenticity, a real life. But David can't live without luxury, without status, without the world he's always known. And how can you be so sure? Because I tried to change him for 10 years. I tried to make him prioritize family, spend more time at home, be a present father. Amanda paused painfully. Do you know what the result was? He completely lost contact with his son, our son. Marina felt something shift in her chest. It wasn't exactly jealousy, but an empathetic pain for the story Amanda was telling. Marina, did David tell you why he lost custody of Michael? He said he prioritized work. David lost custody because he disappeared for 3 days when Michael was in the hospital with pneumonia. He had gone to Miami to close a deal and didn't even call to see how his son was. The revelation hit Marina like a slap. David had never shared those details. Michael was 8 years old, the same age your daughter is now. Amanda left the information hanging in the air. He was hospitalized for 5 days, calling for his father, and David simply didn't show up. Marina swallowed hard. And now? How is Michael? Michael is 15 and hasn't spoken to his father in 2 years. He refuses all attempts at contact. Amanda paused. Marina, do you want that to happen with Lily? The direct question made Marina feel physically ill. Amanda, why are you telling me this? Because I care about David, even after everything, and because I see him repeating the same patterns. Amanda leaned back in her chair. He's falling in love with the idea of a simple family, of an authentic life, but at the first moment of real pressure, when he has to choose between you and his business, you know which choice he will make. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen this movie, Marina, several times. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Marina was processing everything Amanda had said, trying to reconcile it with the David she knew. Attentive, present, affectionate with Lily. Marina, can I ask you a personal question? Sure. Do you really think you can compete with the empire David built? I'm not competing with anything. You are. You are competing with 15 years of habits, with a workaholic personality, with a man who defines his self-worth by the deals he closes. Amanda paused. And you are competing with me. What do you mean, competing with you? David called me last week. Amanda took another sip of wine. He said he wants to try to reconcile. Marina's world stopped. What? He said seeing you with Lily made him realize what he lost with us, that he wants to try to win Michael back. To rebuild our family. Marina felt nauseous. That can't be true. Do you want to see the messages he sent me? Amanda grabbed her phone and showed the screen to Sarah. There were several messages from David sent throughout the previous week, talking about regret, wanting to rebuild his relationship with Michael, questioning whether he had made the right decisions in the past. Sarah, David is not a bad man, but he is a confused man who doesn't know what he really wants. Amanda put the phone away. And until he resolves those issues with the past, any woman who gets involved with him will suffer. Sarah was staring blankly at her plate, trying to process everything she was hearing. The David she knew, who had dinner at home 3 times a week, who helped Lily with math, who had gotten emotional at the street festival. Was this David questioning their relationship? Was he thinking of getting back with his ex-wife? Why are you telling me this, Amanda? Because you seem like a good woman. Because your daughter doesn't deserve to go through what Michael went through. Amanda paused. And because David needs to sort out his life before he destroys yours. What do you want me to do? To give him some space, to let him decide what he really wants without the pressure of a new relationship. Amanda signaled for the waiter to bring the check. Sarah, if David chooses to be with you after he resolves his issues, you will have a real chance. But if you continue like this, with him torn between the past and the present, no one will be happy. Sarah left lunch completely shaken. On the crowded afternoon bus ride home, she tried to process everything Amanda had told her. The messages to the ex-wife, Michael's story in the hospital, the suggestion that David was using her to escape his own problems. When she got home, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table, under the supervision of Mrs. Smith. "Mom, how was lunch?" Lily asked cheerfully. "It was enlightening," Sarah replied, trying to sound normal. "You look pale, my daughter," observed Mrs. Smith. "Did something happen?" "Mrs. Smith, can you keep Lily tonight? I need to sort some things out." "Of course, dear, but are you sure you're okay?" Sarah looked at Lily, who was watching her with that worried expression she took on when she sensed something was wrong, and felt her heart break. If Amanda was right, if David was really going to repeat with Lily the pattern he had established with Michael. "I'm fine," she lied. "I just need some time to think." At 7 in the evening, when David rang the doorbell for the Thursday dinner that had become a tradition, Sarah answered with an expression he immediately recognized as problematic. "Sarah, what happened? I need to talk to you, alone." David looked over Sarah's shoulder, seeing Lily at the kitchen table. "Okay, do you want to go out to talk?" "I do." They walked in silence to the small park in the public housing complex, where they sat on the same bench where David had met Mrs. Smith months earlier. Sarah was visibly tense, and David knew something serious was happening. "Sarah, talk to me. What's bothering you?" Sarah took a deep breath, deciding to be direct. "I had lunch with Amanda today." David's face changed completely. "Amanda reached out to you? Why?" "To tell me some things about you that I think I should know." David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Sarah recognized as a sign of nervousness. "Sarah, what did she tell you?" "She told me that you are questioning our relationship, that you sent her messages talking about reconciliation." David was silent for a long moment, a silence that was more revealing than any answer. "Is it true, David?" "Sarah, it's complicated." "It's not complicated. It's simple. You sent messages to your ex-wife talking about getting back together, didn't you?" David sighed deeply. "I did." The confession hit like a punch. Sarah had expected a denial, an explanation, anything less than the simple and direct confirmation. "Why?" Because seeing you with Lily made me think about what I lost with Michael. It made me question whether I should try to reclaim my own family." "Your own family." Sarah repeated the words with a tone that David couldn't identify as anger or pain. "And where do Lily and I fit into this equation?" "Sarah, you both are important to me." "David, stop. Just stop." Sarah got up from the bench. "You both are important to you as what? As an experience, as a test, as therapy for you to resolve your issues with being an absent father? It's not like that." "It is like that, David. Amanda was right." Sarah began to pace back and forth. "You are using our life, our simplicity, our affection as a way to escape your own problems. Sarah, I love you. David, you love the idea of me. You love the fantasy of a simple life that you built in your head. Sarah stopped in front of him. But when it comes time to truly choose, you will always choose what is familiar, what is safe, what belongs to your world. David remained silent because he knew he couldn't completely deny what Sarah was saying. Sarah, I can explain. David, answer me one question. When Michael was hospitalized with pneumonia, where were you? The sudden change of subject caught David off guard. How do you know about that? Amanda told me. Answer, where were you when your 8-year-old son was in the hospital calling for you? David lowered his head. I was closing a deal in Rio. For 3 days. For 3 days. David, Lily is 8 years old, the same age Michael was. Can you look at her and guarantee me that if an important deal came up, you wouldn't make the same choice? The question hung in the air between them. David tried to respond, opened his mouth several times, but the words wouldn't come out. A colorful house. What is this? It's how I draw our family when the teacher asks us to draw our family. Sarah looked at the drawing more closely. Lily, why do you draw 3 people? Because that's how I feel about our family. Me, you, and David. Lily's simple words broke something inside Sarah's heart. Sweetheart, but David doesn't live with us. He doesn't have to live with us too. Be family, right? Julia from school has divorced parents, and she says she has 2 families, her mum's house and her dad's house. Lily's childlike logic made Sarah smile. That's an interesting way to see things. Mum, can I tell you a secret? Of course. I asked Mrs. Smith if it's normal to miss someone who isn't a relative. And what did she say? She said that when you truly love someone, that person becomes part of your heart's family. Sarah hugged Lily, feeling tears burn her eyes. Mrs. Smith is very wise. She is, and she said one more thing. What? She said that sometimes adults are afraid to be happy because they think they don't deserve it. The neighbor's observation, echoed by Lily's innocence, struck Sarah like lightning. For the past 3 months, she had focused on all the reasons why a relationship with David might not work. The social differences, his past as an absent father, the possibility that he was still confused about what he wanted. But there was one question she hadn't asked herself. What if David had really changed? What if the months they spent together had truly transformed him? What if she was punishing him for a past he was genuinely trying to overcome? Lily, do you really want to participate in that math competition? I really do. Why? Sarah took a deep breath, making a decision she knew would change everything again. Because I think I know someone who can help you study. The next morning, Sarah did something she hadn't done in 3 months. She called David. When she heard his voice on the other end of the line, it felt like time hadn't passed. Sarah, is that you? It's me, how are you? I'm fine. Surprised, very surprised. David's voice sounded different, more measured, more reflective. How are you guys? How's Lily? We're good. David, I need to talk to you. Is that okay? Sure. When? Where? This afternoon? At the same coffee shop where we first met? I'll be there, Sarah. What? Thank you for calling. At 3 in the afternoon, Sarah was sitting at the same table where she had waited for David, 40 minutes late, on a Christmas Eve that felt like it happened in another life. This time, she arrived 5 minutes early, and David arrived right on time. He looked different, thinner, with some wrinkles she didn't remember seeing before, but there was something in his eyes that seemed calmer, more resolved. Sarah, he said, sitting across from her, you look beautiful. Thank you. You look different. Different how? I can't explain. More at peace. David smiled. It's been 3 months. Enlightening. Do you want to tell me about those 3 months? David took a deep breath. Sarah, I did everything you suggested. I thought about what I really want. I tried to resolve pending issues from my past. And I discovered some important things about myself. Sarah gestured, for him to continue. First thing, you were right. I was using our relationship as an escape from my own problems. David paused to take a sip of coffee. Second thing, Amanda was right too. I'm a workaholic, and I have a terrible track record as a father. Sarah felt her heart tighten. David, let me finish. Third thing, I discovered that none of this means I can't change. How so? Sarah, in the last 3 months I did 2 things I had never done in my life. First, I sought a psychologist. The confession took Sarah by surprise. Really? Really. I found out I have serious issues to resolve about priorities, relationships, and fatherhood. David paused. And the second thing, I went after Michael. Sarah's heart raced. Went after him how? I traveled to the United States. I spent a month there trying to regain my son's trust. And did you? David smiled, but it was a complicated smile. Partially. Michael is still very hurt with me, but for the first time in 2 years, he agreed to talk. We talked about what happened when he was in the hospital, about my absences, about how he felt abandoned. How was it? Painful. Very painful, but necessary. David looked directly into Sarah's eyes. Sarah, Michael told me something that completely changed my perspective on fatherhood. What? He said he didn't want me to come home because he was afraid I would promise to be present and then disappear again. He said it was better for me to stay away than to give him hope and then disappoint him. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. And what did you say? That I completely understood his fear, and that I didn't want him to trust me again because of promises. I wanted him to trust me again because of actions. And then I spent an entire month there, every day picking him up from college, taking him out to dinner, talking about his life, his plans, the things I had missed during the years I was absent. David paused. I didn't talk about work once in an entire month. Sarah was impressed. And how was it? It was revealing. I discovered that my son is an incredible young man, intelligent, funny, someone I had never truly known. David smiled genuinely for the first time in the conversation, and I found out that being a real father is much better than being a successful businessman. And now, how are things between you two? Michael is still cautious, but he agreed to keep contact. We talk via video conference every week. He's coming to spend Christmas here in New York City. David paused. And Sarah, he wants to meet you and Lily. The information caught Sarah completely off guard. What do you mean, meet us? I told him about both of you. I shared how you two changed my perspective on family, on what really matters in life. David leaned over the table. Michael said that anyone who could make his dad realize he had been wrong for 15 years must be very special. Sarah didn't know what to say. Sarah, can I tell you what else I discovered in these 3 months? Sure. I found out that Amanda was wrong about one thing. She said I fell in love with you two as a novelty, like a simple life fantasy. David took Sarah's hands over the table. But the truth is that I fell in love with you because you showed me who I really want to be. David, Sarah, I don't want a simple life because it's a romantic fantasy. I want a simple life because I discovered that's where I'm truly happy. David squeezed her hands. I want to be the man who helps Lily with math, who goes to street festivals, who has dinner at home and talks about the workday. I want to be the man you allow me to be. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. David, How can I be sure you won't change your mind when life gets tough? Because I've already passed the test. What test? In these 3 months I received 3 business proposals that would have tripled my wealth. They all required constant travel, total dedication, years away from home. David smiled. I turned them all down. Seriously? Sarah, I realized I don't want to be the richest man in the cemetery anymore. I want to be the man who is present for the people he loves. Sarah was openly crying now. David, I also discovered some things in these 3 months. What? I found out that I'm stronger and more independent than I thought. That I can build a career, provide opportunities for Lily, and have a dignified life on my own merits. Does that change anything between us? It changes everything. Sarah wiped her tears. Because now I'm not with you out of need. I'm with you by choice. David got up from his chair, walked around the table and hugged Sarah right there in the coffee shop, not caring about the curious glances from others. Sarah, will you forgive me for taking so long to realize the obvious? I'll forgive you if you forgive me for being afraid to be happy. Forgiven. David kissed her gently. And Sarah. What? Does Lily really want to participate in that math competition? Sarah laughed through her tears. She really does, and she needs a tutor who understands the subject. I know a guy who can help. He's not very good at it yet, but he's learning to get better every day. Then he's hired. When they got home that afternoon, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. When she saw David walk in behind Sarah, her eyes lit up as if it were Christmas. David, you're back. I'm back, if you two will have me again. Lily ran to hug him. Of course we will. I missed your math explanations. David looked over Lily's head at Sarah, who was leaning against the kitchen door, smiling. So, he said, how about we start with that math competition? And for the first time in 3 months, the home felt complete again.